Hello again. Now, coalition governments are crumbling in metros around the country, and with national elections set for next year, some people are suggesting a coalition government at national level could become a reality. So what does it take to make coalition governments work? Legal and development practitioner Karabo Mokgonyana believes that they can work only if parties are willing to compromise on the development and implementation of public policy. She joins me now to expand on this. Karabo, good afternoon. Welcome to Today, and thank you very much for your time. I mean, just yesterday I was talking about this with a guest here on ENCA, and they were pointing to the need for a legal framework to guide the country around issues of coalitions, and the Deputy President, Paul Mashatile, addressing the National Council of Provinces and answering questions there related to coalitions. He said the same thing. Will that help us, you think?
Good afternoon, Dan, and good afternoon to your viewers. A legal framework, or even just a political or policy framework, would definitely be of assistance. A lot of the times when you then have, political parties who have different interests, different views, different agendas, you do need some form of regulatory framework, or at least rules, just like we have the parliamentary rules that really govern, the interactions at parliament level. We are going to need a set of rules or regulations to help in navigating those relationships, because unfortunately, as we see, in a lot of our metros, it's really not, the absence of coalition rules and managing those sort of relationships is seeing a lot of instability within the coalition governments.
Yeah, I hold a view that a lot of this instability we're seeing has got more to do with positions of power than with ideologies.
Absolutely. I mean, the reality is that you have political parties that, have different, like I was saying, different interests, different views, but also, they want their leaders to be the one who are holding the fort, who are leading within the metros or in whatever institutions we are talking about. So there is a power dynamics to it. But at the same time, the reality is we are dealing with human beings as well. So there are egos that get in the way. There are also then clashes of agendas and public policy, because every single political party has their own agendas and they have their own, way forward in terms of what they would like public policy to look like. So there are all these different things that are clashing. But I think what is heavily missing at the heart of it is that public interest to be put first, as opposed to, our own agendas as a political party and the fact that we want our leader to be at the forefront. There are all those different issues. And unfortunately, then there is a neglect of what is in the public interest. And they forget that the public has put you into those positions for you to drive public policy and to drive public issues.
Yeah, judging by the noise we've seen in Johannesburg, in Tshwane, in Ekurhuleni, and elsewhere, where they've been battling in working together in multi-party coalitions, would you agree then, Karabo, that you would need all parties around the table to sit down and agree what would this policy look like to make sure that if there's a coalition, the interests of the public are always served, not the interests of individual parties?
Absolutely. And that is going to be important because, I mean, we need to understand the premise for two or more political parties coming together. So we've identified that we need each other somewhere, somehow to have, to have leverage within this governance system. So in coming together, we've agreed that we are going to put aside, we need each other, and our public policies need to somewhere align, and the agendas need to equally align. So I think that when these coalitions form, they seem to forget that. They seem to forget that there was a compromise that had to happen. There was an agreement that had to happen. And at the heart of it, they agreed to work together to implement public policy. It seems like when they get in, all of that is forgotten, and there's so much clashes that go on.
Yeah, and there's enough time. We don't know the date yet of next year's general elections. our national and provincial elections, there will be time for these parties to get together ahead of that. I mean, after all, South Africa has done this before when all political parties signed the National Peace Accord ahead of 1994 during a very violent period, politically violent period in our country. So we can do this. So designing and producing such a public policy should help. And in a funny way, I think the silver lining here has the failures and the instability we're seeing in the various metros now is like standing us in Gusta and opening our eyes of the dangers of allowing such to happen at the national level.
Yeah, it's actually scary because, I think, and it's sad to say that what we're seeing at, local government is almost like, our model of what we should expect, and we should use that, to learn from it so that it doesn't escalate to provincial and national government. And we should really learn from those sort of lessons. But at the same time, I do think outside of rules, we are going to need some form of oversight committee or oversight institution. And maybe that may look like extending the mandate of IEC to have an oversight of the coalitions, because unfortunately, it seems like it's very difficult for the different political parties to have oversight of themselves, to hold them accountable to public interest. So we're going to need some form of committee or institution who's going to have an oversight over, monitoring performance, reviewing and evaluating services, questioning decisions that are actually being made, understanding the compositions and the representation. So it has to go with some form of institution that's going to have oversight over these coalitions.
Yeah, but as you say, I mean, as you've mentioned before, in the production of such a public policy and its implementation, you're going to need everybody around the table to be together, and it will have to make sure it's not one size fits all, or it favors the dominant, let's call them that, not bigger, the dominant parties. Because in a coalition environment, Karabo, your framework has to have some equity to it. You can't say there's a smaller party or a bigger party. But look at Joburg, for example. There's the party, the Al Jamaa party, has one councillor. He's now the mayor.
Absolutely. And I think that's the value of coalitions. It doesn't matter whether you're small, you're a smaller in terms of your percentage share or you contribute a bigger margin. It really does enable political parties that haven't been the most visible or the most included in terms of, managing our government system. And the beauty of coalitions is that it does that. You see political parties that wouldn't ordinarily be given the chance of day to be in such roles become, a part of what government is, and making decisions and pushing for specific public policy that they have never had the opportunity to even put forward.
Yeah, I'm hoping somebody's moving fast, because while we don't know the date, Karabo, of our elections next year, time is ticking. And if all the polls currently are to be believed, we might get a coalition government at the national level. How urgently do you think those who are meant to come up with such policies should deal with this matter?
It is extremely urgent. I think even before we get to the dates, and I think that framework and those measures need to be put in place, because unfortunately, the instability of coalition governments has also seen a big, a big convenience to administration. We are struggling to separate the political instability within coalitions and the running of government. So service delivery, the pushing of specific agendas and mandates, and public policy stops as a result of decisions taking longer because there are clashes within coalitions. So we either need to find a way to separate the running of administrations within our government versus all this instability that goes on from a political landscape. And without such a framework, we're going to see a lot of the issues that our public is facing not being addressed, because we're still waiting for clashes to be resolved, decisions to be made, people to make compromises, and really egos to get out of the way.
Karabo Mokgonyana, it's been a pleasure talking to you this Friday afternoon here on Today on ENC, getting your views around coalition governments and how countries should approach them going forward. She's a legal and development practitioner.